Greetings all, Ferrari Man 601 here. Welcome to the live commentary stream for the 2019 Formula One Japanese Grand Prix. As always, with these streams, this is a commentary stream and a commentary stream only. I will not be showing you an actual live feed of the Japanese Grand Prix in progress, as I do not own the rights to any of that. Therefore, I cannot show it to you. But I can talk about Formula One, and I can talk about the Japanese Grand Prix as it is happening before us. We have very much a truncated weekend here at Suzuka. The typhoon, which impacted Japan yesterday and in the early morning hours of today, has since passed in terms of being a threat to the race. They had to cancel qualifying and free practice 3, at least for Saturday. However, we did have a qualifying session just about 2 hours ago, and Sebastian Vettel, quite surprisingly, has taken pole position for this race. He's also joined on the front row by his Ferrari teammate, Charles Leclerc. An all-Ferrari front row for this race, and again, all of this occurring just about 2 hours ago. We will pause now to make sure that we have everything all synced up and we have got all of our clocks running where they need to be. I've got positive talkbacks on everything, and we're go to continue the stream. I see that 2 of you have joined here, at least from what I'm seeing on my encoder. Welcome to both of you. Again, we are going to be taking you through the entire duration of the Japanese Grand Prix, which is set to start at 10 past the hour. We are just past 53 past midnight here on the east coast of the United States. Looking for the start of the formation lap at 10 past the hour. That will be 13:10 local time at Suzuka. That will be 1:10 local time for here on the East Coast. For those of you just joining here, again, this is a live commentary stream of the 2019 Japanese Grand Prix. No real-world footage is going to be shown. However, the starting grid for the Japanese Grand Prix, we had our qualifying session just about 2 hours ago, and the grid positions line up a little bit like this. Pole position for Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel, his Q3 time, a 1:27.064. That is a new all-out track record for Suzuka. P2 for his teammate Charles Leclerc with a 1:27.253. P3, Valtteri Bottas, the first of the Mercedes drivers, 1:27.293. P4, world champion Lewis Hamilton, 1:27.302. P5 for Max Verstappen in the first of the Red Bulls, 1:27.851. P6, Alexander Albon, Verstappen's Red Bull teammate, 1:27.851. Absolutely identical lap times there from the 2 Red Bull drivers. Verstappen gets P5 on account of him having set his time first. P7, Carlos Sainz in the first of the McLarens, 1:28.304. Lando Norris, P8, 1:28.464. Pierre Gasly, 1:28.836 was good for P9, and Romain Grosjean lines up our Q3 finishers with a 1:29.341. Eliminated in Q2, P11 rather, Antonio Giovinazzi, 1:29.254. P12, Lance Stroll, 1:29.345. P13, Kimi Räikkönen in the second of the Alfa Romeos, 1:29.358. P14, Daniel Kvyat for Toro Rosso, 1:29.563. P15, Nico Hülkenberg. He had some sort of technical problem in Q2. We don't know what that was, and hopefully we'll be seeing him starting this race. 1:30.112 was the German's fastest time in Q2. Eliminated in Q1, P16, Daniel Ricciardo, his best time, a 1:29.822. P17, Sergio Perez, 1:30.344. P18, and the last car classified from qualifying, George Russell, 1:30.364. Not classified and failing to set a time in qualifying are Kevin Magnussen and Robert Kubica, both of whom had accidents in the final corner of this Suzuka circuit. Neither driver set a time in qualifying. Both cars are going to need extensive work if they're going to make the race today, and we've only got about another 10 minutes for those guys to be on the grid for the formation lap. We will see if Kevin Magnussen or Robert Kubica are able to take the start today. Press F for F-Man talking to himself. Well, nice to see you here, Noah. Hopefully, we'll not be talking to ourselves for too much longer. It's always a tough call wanting to do these live streams in the middle of the night for these races, which are happening well off sequence with the normal schedule, but hopefully we're going to get some more people here pretty soon. Well, Williams and Haas trying to take the McLindy approach. Well, hopefully their front wings and nose cone assemblies are the same color as the rest of the car. Otherwise, there's going to be a problem. What is very much a point of interest for me, anyways, to see whether or not Williams are going to be able to rebuild Kubica's car in order to take the start. I pretty much think that they're not going to be starting from the grid. Rather, they'll be starting from the pit lane. In terms of what Haas are going to do, Magnussen's car looked significantly less damaged than Kubica's did. Perhaps they'll be able to make it to the grid. Perhaps they'll also start from the pit lane. I very much wonder if Williams will be able to start the race at all. There was some comprehensive damage to Kubica's car, particularly on the front end. The left front wheel and whole suspension assembly was completely ripped off from the monocoque, so hopefully the mounting points for the wishbones weren't pulled out of the chassis. If that's the case, then they may not have a spare monocoque ready to be built up, and even if they did, I don't know if 2 hours is enough time to build up a Formula One car, so we'll see what Williams are able to do. Hopefully the damage was localized, and it's just a matter of replacing the suspension components. The Haas looked in significantly better shape. Magnussen actually managed to drive it basically a complete lap back around to the pits. It had most of the front wing gone, and the rear wing had collapsed. However, the rest of the car seemed all right, and it was obviously running and still drivable, mechanically speaking, in order to make it back to the pits. So we will find out, but I am very interested to find out what's going to happen with Williams there. 1 minute until Noah is 23. I'll tell you what, 23 feels no different than 22, and by the time you're 27, you wish that you could be, well, I don't know, 18 again. And I am showing 1 hour into this day, which means it is midnight over where you are, Noah. So allow me to be the first to wish you a happy 23rd birthday, and hopefully 23 is better than 22. I was waiting for U.S. terrestrial television to make the switch over to covering the Formula One race. Hopefully that's still going to happen. That switch over for me is going to happen in about 5 minutes, so I don't see anything from Suzuka yet. I see that there are now a whole 7 of you watching. Please make yourselves known in the chat. Pokemon Files. F-Man, I think you were cursing Ferrari's race by playing their worthless SF-15 in the background. Well, I may well be. However, let's give credit where credit is due. The SF-15 did manage to win 3 races, all by Sebastian Vettel, and it was an absolutely terrible car, just as the SF-90 was an absolutely terrible car at the beginning of the season, but it's since come back, and it's won 3 races so far, 4 if we count the Canadian Grand Prix, which absolutely was won by Sebastian Vettel. So, I don't know, perhaps there's some nice symmetry in that. Motorsport Harmony now wondering, are your neighbors going to be annoyed? Well, my neighbors are all in separate buildings, so I don't think they're going to be able to hear anything. Over here on terrestrial U.S. television, just waiting for the switchover to happen. That should be happening in about 2 minutes. The moment they're still covering college egg ball, which apparently is a thing for some ungodly reason. Super Soldier 97X, yes, single detached housing for the win. Absolutely. Motorsport Harmony asking, what do you think about the wind gusts? Maybe make the race a bit chaotic? Well, it could well do. I don't really know what the wind direction is, but I do know that, at least for qualifying, which again was only about 2 hours ago, the wind was steady at about 20 kilometers an hour. So that's a significant amount of wind. We don't normally see races happening in that high winds. Of course, these winds being generated by the typhoon moving out back over the ocean after having impacted the Tokyo area earlier today and last night. But thankfully, as far as Suzuka is concerned, they were spared the worst of it. The circuit is totally washed clean, though. Qualifying would have put down some rubber, but not all that much. So still effectively a green circuit for these guys. The lap time's a little bit down from what we were expecting. We were thinking perhaps we could even see mid-126s in qualifying, but the track conditions simply didn't allow for it. But everything has dried out. About 60% humidity during qualifying. I don't expect that has changed all that much in the intervening 2 hours. So we'll see. As far as the wind goes, Sebastian Vettel said that he had a headwind all through Sector 1, through the S's. That's good, because when these cars have a headwind, they generate a little bit more downforce than they normally would. Conversely, when they have a tailwind, and if I'm picturing this in my head correctly, they should have a tailwind coming out of the hairpin as they're going through that long right-hander through Spoon. And then they should have a significant crosswind as they're going down the back straight toward 130R. But that is going to be mitigated somewhat by the fact that the back straight is shielded behind a hillside, so perhaps it won't be as severe. Going through 130R, though, that could be interesting in terms of crosswind, and then, of course, going down the start-finish straight, it's going to be a crosswind. But again, going up through the S's, if the wind direction hasn't changed very much, it's going to be helping them. Yes, motorsports coverage in the United States has truly become horrendous since we lost Speed. Of course, the Speed Channel, I remember that in the mid-2000s. Becoming a Formula One fan back then, it was great. I loved their commentary team. Bob Varsha, David Hobbs, Steve Matchett, Peter Windsor. They were brilliant, particularly to have Steve Matchett with his real-world motorsport experience being a mechanic for Benetton when they were winning world championships. The insights that he always had to offer were absolutely tremendous, and I learned a lot just listening to that guy. And, of course, reading his books. Go read Steve Matchett's books if you haven't already. He basically tells you all the little details about working for Benetton in the 90s that you really wouldn't have known otherwise. It's absolutely fascinating. Pokemon Files, yes, you did say this at the end of the qualifying stream. This is the first time that qualifying and the race were held on a Sunday. In other words, both happening on the same day. Pole and the race were won by Michael Schumacher. Of course, he was driving for Ferrari in that year, and of course that year he won his 7th and final world championship. Schumacher had already clinched the world championship by the time of the 2004 Japanese Grand Prix. However, that was still a very dominant performance, and hopefully either Sebastian Vettel or Charles Leclerc can channel that energy heading into this race. These guys, again, they've got to be all kinds of messed up with this timetable. They got into the cars for the first time in over 24 hours, 2 hours ago, to go qualify, and now they have less than 2 hours turnaround time to go do a full Grand Prix. So it's got to be a bit of a demand on them, mentally and physically, but of course, these guys are professionals, and they're going to do a great job. Sky Sports running through the starting grid now. The Ferraris on row 1, the Mercedes on row 2. Valtteri Bottas out-qualifying Lewis Hamilton again. Interesting. All Red Bulls on row 3, and all McLarens on row 4 for 7th and 8th. Really interesting to see all of these teams running up line astern. Get a deviation on row 5 there with Gasly and Grosjean to finish out Q3. Again, Magnussen and Kubica, neither one qualified at all. Not classified in qualifying. Neither one set a time. Both had crashes. And we still have yet to see whether or not either one of those guys is actually going to take the start today. Super Soldier 97, yes, Peter Windsor, a lot of people don't know this, but he was actually one of the team managers for Williams in the early 90s. So if you want to talk about somebody who's going to know what's up, it's going to be Peter Windsor. He actually was the passenger in the car with Frank Williams when Frank Williams had the accident that caused his paralysis. Yes, the starting grid does look like a typical Spanish Grand Prix. We typically see these kinds of grids in Spain because it's basically the only place where these guys go testing anymore. And they know that place extremely well, so the cars basically do line up in terms of the order of their raw pace, and you tend to see each car from each team line up next to each other. But it's interesting to see that here, particularly due to the protracted running that we've had. At this point, seeing live pictures from the grid, all the drivers are in their cars. We are expecting the formation lap to kick off in just about 1 minute or so. The mechanics holding on those tire blankets for the last few seconds that they're allowed before they all have to run off the grid. The grandstand's still full from qualifying. Doesn't look like anybody has gone home. And why would they? This should be an absolutely cracking race. I, for one, was not expecting Ferrari to lock out the front row. I thought that this was going to be the domain of Mercedes for sure with all the high-speed corners at this circuit. But Ferrari, evidently, after the summer break, going out of the Hungarian Grand Prix and into Spa, they did an absolutely great job to update that car. 10 past the hour, ticking by just now. We await the green lights. Green lights at the front of the field, and the formation lap has begun. The field rolls off. Sebastian Vettel leading Charles Leclerc, leading Valtteri Bottas, leading Lewis Hamilton as the field comes into turn 1 for, well, the first time as a unified field, but far from the first time today. So far, a pretty fast formation lap going on here. Sebastian Vettel leading everybody away in a hurry, on board with the German. Sebastian Vettel does like this place. In his team radio after qualifying, he did call this place his favorite circuit. So we'll see if that positive momentum of being able to grab a pole position on short order is able to carry him through the 53 scheduled laps of the Japanese Grand Prix. We shall see in due course. The field coming through the hairpin now. Again, a reasonably quick formation lap. Robert Kubica is sitting in his car. I believe he is still in the garage, but Williams have done a great job to rebuild that car. Obviously, they haven't been able to do a shakedown run on anything, but I don't think that they would have had to replace the gearbox and certainly not the engine, so we'll see. Still waiting to confirm the whereabouts of Kevin Magnussen. And just as we saw in qualifying 2 hours ago, still big vortices coming off of the rear wings of these cars. There is still a lot of moisture in the air. The circuit is completely dry, however, and of course there are basically no clouds in the sky. Jonathan Straitman, hello! You're alive! Welcome back! Jonathan is a stalwart fan of the channel, and he's gone AWOL in recent months, but great to see you back. On board with Valtteri Bottas as he comes to the grid. Toto Wolff looking on pensively there. And, of course, this final run-up to the grid, a very critical time for the drivers and for these cars. The teams will have briefed the drivers on the specific warm-up procedures that they need to accomplish as they get to their grid slot. You'll see the drivers weaving about, doing burnouts, feeling out the clutch bite point, going through all of their steering wheel pages, making sure that all of the settings are in the correct positions for the race start. Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc have stopped on row one. Leclerc positioning his car over to his left there, looking to cover off Valtteri Bottas, it would appear, if not to get a better start and get a launch on Sebastian. Kevin Magnussen there at the back of the field. And Robert Kubica is still in the garage, confirmed. He will be starting from the pit lane. Kevin Magnussen is going to the grid. The last two rows of the grid now coming into position. Kevin Magnussen will line up on the back row all alone. Robert Kubica in the pit lane. The safety car has moved into position. The green flag is up at the back. Stand by for the lights. 3, 4, 5. Pause. And the Japanese Grand Prix is go. Good start by Sebastian Vettel. Better start for Valtteri Bottas. He takes the lead into turn one. He is followed by Sebastian Vettel, and one of the Red Bulls is harrying Charles Leclerc right now. And around the outside, attempted to go Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc made contact with him. Verstappen off in the exit of turn two. He has resumed. There is damage on that Red Bull, and there is damage on that Ferrari. Charles Leclerc has damage on the left side of his front wing. The end fence is flapping about and dragging on the ground. Some sparks coming up from the front wing of that car. But it is Valtteri Bottas leading Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc as they go through Degner 2 for the first time. Through the hairpin now. Order unchanged at the front. We are waiting to confirm the whereabouts of Max Verstappen. I did see him in the back of the picture getting back onto the circuit, but undoubtedly he is at the back of the field, and Charles Leclerc is in trouble, losing a lot of downforce there with that damage on his front wing. It does not appear to be impinging on the left front tire, so that is good news, but that piece, is particularly the end fence there, it's a rather massive section. On board with Lewis Hamilton in replay, we see Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen get together. Lewis Hamilton very nearly losing out to a McLaren, and there was contact, actually, between the McLaren of Carlos Sainz and the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. Unsure if there's damage to either car. I saw some bits flapping about. Charles Leclerc there with damage on the front wing. He decides to carry on and begin lap 2 on track. More sparks coming down off of the front wing for Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton looking at him into turn 1. Hamilton thinking better of it, but that piece of the end fence there for Charles Leclerc is dragging on the ground, and it is going to break free at some point. We may see the black and orange flag for that car. On board with Lewis Hamilton, it's a little bit difficult to see with the obstruction of halo, but one of the canard wings on the nose of that Mercedes, the left canard wing, appears to be out of position, if not entirely broken off. Something not quite right on that Mercedes. And the condition of that front wing for Charles Leclerc is getting worse. There's a rather severe vibration going on across the front end of that Ferrari now, and it does appear that one of his mirrors, his left side mirror, also is flapping about. I don't know if that was somehow damaged in that contact with Verstappen, or if the vibrations due to that front wing oscillating about have caused more damage. And the front wing end fence, anyway, for Charles Leclerc has broken free. It showered Lewis Hamilton with carbon debris. We'll see if the Ferrari comes into the pits. He locks up and nearly misses the final chicane. He does not, however, and he continues. Lewis Hamilton having some difficulty keeping up with Leclerc at this point, but he will have a run coming down the start-finish straight. Will Hamilton go for the overtake? Ducks out of the slipstream, but he decides better of it. Leclerc continues to lead Hamilton. Again, this is the battle for P3. Meanwhile, at the front, Valtteri Bottas leads Sebastian Vettel by 1.1 seconds, despite Vettel just having set fastest lap of the race thus far, working lap 3 of 53. And at this point, all of the action happening behind the front runners. Race control has enabled DRS. The order working lap 3 of 53. Valtteri Bottas leads Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc. The gap between first and second is 1.5 seconds. Lewis Hamilton in 4th, Sainz 5th, Norris 6th, Albon 7th, Gasly 8th, Stroll 9th, Hülkenberg in 10th, 11th, Perez 12th, Giovinazzi, Magnussen 13th, Grosjean 14th, Raikkonen 15th, Ricciardo 16th, Kvyat 17th, Verstappen 18th, Russell 19th, and Kubica P20. The incident between Leclerc and Verstappen has been noted by race control. We await word of any further action. Slow motion replay now of that front wing end fence coming apart for Charles Leclerc. Again, Lewis Hamilton was right in the slipstream. It showered him with debris. Valtteri Bottas, meanwhile, sets fastest lap, 1:34 and change. Charles Leclerc now comes into the pits. Mattia Binotto looking on. Ferrari ready with the new front wing. Leclerc comes into the pits. There shouldn't be any more damage on that car. I did see his left side wing mirror just deflecting upward relative to the side pod. That appears to have sorted itself out now. We have a local yellow in Sector 2 for some reason. Haven't seen that yet. So tire change and a wing change for Charles Leclerc, 9.9 second stop. He has now exited the pits. Leclerc appears to be rejoining the race in P20. On board with Max Verstappen, we're running in P17 with the Dutchman. At least from this camera, I do not note any significant damage on the Red Bull. However, perhaps another angle would show us something a little bit better. One of the canard wings just below the cockpit appears to be flapping around on the right-hand side of that car. Again, we need an external view to see that a little bit better. In replay, the start, Bottas absolutely shot out of a cannon, and then all hell breaks loose between Leclerc and Verstappen into turn 1. That angle didn't show us what we needed to see, but Valtteri Bottas absolutely got the jump on everybody. He went from 3rd to 1st in the order of about 200 meters. That was quite the getaway. Of course, we remember Austria. I believe that was Austria 2018? Was it 2018 or 2017 when Valtteri Bottas got his reaction time pretty much exactly right? It had to have been a jump start in his mind, but he just happened to drop the clutch at the absolute instant that the red lights went out. Here's the angle we need on this replay between Leclerc and Verstappen. It was just contact between the two cars. Leclerc getting understeer on cold tires in the first corner, and Verstappen being perhaps a little optimistic, trying to go around the outside there. Leclerc was only ever going to push out wide, and Verstappen was just there to meet him. Not entirely sure who you fault in that, if anybody. Leclerc had a little bit of a wiggle through the corner, and Verstappen was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. That was Leclerc's corner in my estimation. And Sebastian Vettel, that was the reason he went into anti-stall right off the start. That pole position immediately turned into second place. Very nearly stalled it. Well, that was a rather extraordinary turn of events there. Meanwhile, Lando Norris, and that was Alexander Albon in the other Red Bull there. They came together in the triangle. Bits of carbon fiber dancing around the circuit there after that incident. That was, I dare say, that was the Senna-Prost collision of 1989. Albon coming from a long way back. Norris would have had no reason to suspect that there'd be a dive bomb like that, yet there Albon was. Norris turns in, and they make contact. Sim Racing 604. Hello, Mike. Welcome. Max Verstappen to the Red Bull pit saying his car is moving around a lot under braking. I do think that there is damage to one of those canard wings on the right-hand side of the monocoque due to that collision with Charles Leclerc at the start. Don't really know what else could be damaged. Perhaps barge boards, perhaps turning vanes. But something is a little bit askew on that Red Bull. Meanwhile, Valtteri Bottas is doing his best Lewis Hamilton impersonation. The gap between he and Sebastian Vettel for first and second is now 2.4 seconds, so he is well outside DRS range of the Ferrari. Are they waiting for pit stops? We shall see. Sebastian Vettel, he almost stalled off the line, though. The car went into anti-stall. He needed a second go at the clutch in order to get it pulled away. Very lucky not to stall it there. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo going past Antonio Giovinazzi in turn 1. That was for P10. Ricciardo now has it. Giovinazzi desperately wants it back. Everyone holding station at the front. The gap still hovering between 2.3, 2.4 seconds between Bottas and Vettel. Hamilton in P3. He is 5 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. Lewis Hamilton really appears to be off the boil lately. Meanwhile, now formally under investigation by race control, the Leclerc-Verstappen incident, lap 1, turn 2. Currently, Max Verstappen runs in P16. Charles Leclerc just took P17 off of George Russell. Still some pieces of Leclerc's wing dancing around on the back straight there just on the approach to 130R. Taking a look now in the triangle. That is Daniel Kvyat all over the back of Kimi Räikkönen. He should have DRS coming down start-finish. Kvyat does have DRS on Räikkönen, but Räikkönen has DRS on Grosjean. Räikkönen defends to the inside, much like Giancarlo Fisichella tried to do to him in 2005. Räikkönen was a sly fox that day. However, Kvyat decides to back out of that maneuver. On board again with Charles Leclerc in replay down the back straight. Still seeing that left-hand wing mirror deflecting wildly, and it has actually broken off. Charles Leclerc, the left-hand wing mirror, has departed the Ferrari. Not sure how that may have been damaged. I don't know if that was actually hit by Max Verstappen in the contact, or if that was a knock-on effect of the front wing being misaligned and the airflow actually dislodged the mounting point for that wing, but it appears to have broken right at the base of the stock where it attaches to the car, where the bolts are. So regardless, Charles Leclerc now has a 50% visibility deficit toward the rear. Ferrari just keeping Sebastian Vettel up to date with what's going on around him. He's 2.6 seconds back from Valtteri Bottas. Lewis Hamilton is 2.1 seconds back from Sebastian Vettel at this time. And we've got some action here with Leclerc overtaking Max Verstappen. That's for P16. Keep it together, boys. Don't be repeating your last incident there. Max Verstappen backed off pretty quickly, and he's already dropped back quite significantly to Charles Leclerc. That Red Bull not at all healthy anymore, at least not aerodynamically. Mechanically, it still looks fine. Of course, those two are under investigation by race control. We are awaiting a resolution from that. DRS-assisted overtake there from Charles Leclerc on Max Verstappen. Verstappen tried to defend to the inside of the track. He left that move ever so slightly too late. Leclerc was able to dive down the inside and take the position. Sebastian Vettel now under investigation by the stewards for a false start. This is interesting. When he pulled away, the car went into anti-stall, or at least it appeared to go into anti-stall. I did not note on that replay whether or not the red lights were still on. I don't believe that they were, but then again, I wasn't looking for it. We need another replay to confirm. I did see the car lurch forward, and then it abruptly stopped as if it had gone into anti-stall. I don't know the answer to that question, though. We need a definitive replay. And amidst all the action, the race is already 10 laps old. Valtteri Bottas continues to lead over the now under investigation Sebastian Vettel. Lewis Hamilton in third. Carlos Sainz, a great showing so far for McLaren in fourth. Fifth is Alexander Albon. Sixth for Pierre Gasly. Seventh, Stroll. Eighth, Hülkenberg. Ninth, Perez. And 10th, Daniel Ricciardo in your final points-paying position for the moment. We are still waiting a resolution on the Verstappen-Leclerc investigation. Max Verstappen telling the pits that his tires are becoming massively flat-spotted. He can't brake. That would explain the pace deficit that he has relative to Charles Leclerc. Meanwhile, on board with Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari looking a little bit lopsided now, missing that left-hand mirror. He is all over the back of Daniel Kvyat. I certainly think that we will see an overtake before the end of this lap if Charles Leclerc has anything to say about it. Does he try anything through 130R? We shall see. He's hanging with the Red Bull so far through Spoon. He's going to have a lot of a slipstream as we go down the back straight. He's dropped back a little bit in the dirty air. Jonathan Straitman, your question. Is the car allowed to move a few centimeters as it's sitting on the grid and the start procedure's going on? Well, technically speaking, yes. However, if he triggers the false start sensor that's embedded underneath every grid slot, then he will incur a penalty. It's just a question of whether or not the car creeps forward beyond the range of that sensor or not, and we don't know the answer to that at the moment. I don't even know if that false start happened with the lights still on or not. All I remember seeing was the car lurching forward and then stopping abruptly as if it had gone into anti-stall. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc still going all over the back of Daniel Kvyat. He was unable to effect an overtake down start-finish last time, but he's got a big slipstream now in the run-up to Spoon. Does Kvyat understand he's there? This is risky, going up the inside into Spoon. However, he makes that move go, and it appears to have stuck. Charles Leclerc now up into P15. His next target will be Kimi Räikkönen. And almost immediately, Charles Leclerc is in the immediate vicinity of Kimi Räikkönen. There's the replay, the move on Daniel Kvyat into Spoon. That took some bravery and good heads-up driving there on the part of Daniel Kvyat as well.
Normally, you'd not expect somebody to be trying a move like that in that part of the track, but he saw it, and he allowed it to happen. Kimi Räikkönen with DRS on Romain Grosjean in front is able to hold back the advance of Charles Leclerc down start-finish. I do have the suspicion that the Ferrari will be somewhat better than the Alfa Romeo through the S's, though. On board with Valtteri Bottas in replay, coming up to the hairpin. What's going on? A little bit of a lockup there, turning in. That's a flat spot on the left front tire. Shouldn't be too bad, though. And again, we are anticipating pit stops somewhat soon, so Bottas will be able to carry that for a few more laps. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc is now in hot pursuit of Kimi Räikkönen on the lead up to Spoon. He's not close enough to try a maneuver. Mercedes to Bottas, they're saying, keep it coming, this is good stuff. He's pulled out a gap of just about 4 seconds over Sebastian Vettel. Charles Leclerc in the slipstream of Kimi Räikkönen coming up to 130R. The car holding steady there in the slipstream through that very fast corner. Leclerc all over the rear end of Kimi going through the final chicane. Little bit of a tank slapper going on there for Leclerc, but he keeps his foot in it and he holds it down. Down start finish for Grosjean, Räikkönen, and Leclerc all running line astern. Räikkönen thinking about a move on Grosjean. Leclerc thinking about a move on Räikkönen. They're all holding position right now. This is ultimately the battle for P13. Everybody's still running line astern there in that Grosjean, Räikkönen, Leclerc battle. Race control saying no further action for Sebastian Vettel. Again, I didn't see an infraction per se from Sebastian Vettel on the start, and they say incident involving an alleged false start for Sebastian Vettel, no further action. So the stewards evidently have ruled that there was no false start. In other words, Seb did not jump the start. Charles Leclerc, however, meanwhile, making a very brave move on Kimi Räikkönen into 130R. Charles Leclerc now in P14, dropping Räikkönen to P15. He made that move happen on the entrance to 130R, absolutely flat out, over 300 kilometers an hour in these cars right now, trimmed out in heavy fuel. Leclerc now looking at Romain Grosjean. And again, keep in mind here, we are still waiting on any sort of ruling on that Turn 1 incident between Leclerc and Verstappen, as Leclerc continues to charge his way back up through the field. And one of the stewards, our driver representative this weekend, the 850-time Le Mans winner, Tom Christensen. Sebastian Vettel, yes, that was the replay we needed. He did, in fact, jump forward before the red lights went out. So that was not really an anti-stall situation. That was Sebastian Vettel dropping the clutch a moment too soon. The red lights were clearly still on when the Ferrari first moved. However, he did bring the car to a stop again before the lights went out, and then when the lights did go out, he pulled away per normal. I don't know if that would technically be called a false start, because he did not actually leave his grid slot before the lights went out, but he did lurch forward. Whether or not that is sufficient to trigger the false start sensor, I'm not sure, but the FIA has just ruled that to be a fair start. Charles Leclerc with DRS on Kevin Magnussen now. He has disposed of Romain Grosjean. Meanwhile, the Red Bull pits, Max Verstappen pulls into the garage, nose first. It is game over. Max Verstappen, Red Bull Racing. Verstappen getting out of the car in the garage. That is game over. Meanwhile, hammer time has come for Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. He's now hounding Sebastian Vettel. Hamilton wants P2 at the moment. Lewis Hamilton just 7/10 behind Sebastian Vettel as Alex Albon comes into the pits for Red Bull. Good stop by those guys. Onto the medium compound tires, I believe. Albon rejoins in P11. Giovinazzi inherits P10 for the moment. Again, we're in the pit stop window now. Raikkonen also in the pits. Verstappen classified in the pits, but he has retired. Meanwhile, on board with Valtteri Bottas. Does he decide to peel into the pits this time around on those soft tires? Probably nearing the end of their life. Bottas stays out for at least one more lap. Vettel radio. Ferrari calling Sebastian into the pits, and he obliges, all locked up heading into the pit lane. We do not need a pit lane speed violation, Sebastian. Were you below the limit? Sebastian brings it to a stop in the box. Ferrari goes soft to softs, and away they go. Ferrari going from soft tires to another set of soft tires. This means that Ferrari have to stop at least one more time to comply with the rules of using two tire compounds during the race. On board in replay with Sebastian Vettel through the final chicane and now going in through this pit entry. Was he below the speed limit getting to the line? I believe he was. Trying to read his steering wheel there. The light bars on either side of the steering wheel had not connected by the time that he crossed the line. So I interpret that to mean that he was below the speed limit. So I'm not anticipating a pit lane speed violation for Sebastian Vettel. Jonathan, I did not happen to see that live stream of the 2005 race on YouTube, but I have watched that race many a time over as Valtteri Bottas comes in for what's bound to be a textbook Mercedes stop. That is probably the best Formula One race of the 2000s and perhaps the best Formula One race of the 21st century so far. That was a 2.4-second stop for Mercedes, by the way, onto the medium sidewall tires. So Mercedes, to the regulations, are good to go to the end of the race. Meanwhile, Alex Albon has just set fastest lap in P10. That was a 1:33.959, fastest lap of the race. On board with Lewis Hamilton, there is indeed damage to the front end of that Mercedes. One of those canard wings is still sitting all askew. That's the left-hand canard wing on the nose of that car. Will Lewis Hamilton, who currently leads the race on the pit stop rotation, come into the pits anytime soon, as Sebastian Vettel attempting to overtake Carlos Sainz into spoon, and he makes the move stick. He and Max Verstappen came together in that corner 12 months ago. Now, with Mercedes at least able to do a one-stop strategy as far as the regulations are concerned, and Ferrari now are absolutely committed to stopping at least one more time, are they going to try an undercut sort of situation here? Again, as the car burns fuel, the weight goes down and the lap time should also go down proportionally, but Sebastian needs to be able to keep these tires alive so that he can go fast at the end of this stint in order for any sort of undercut strategy to work. Conversely, Mercedes, they won't stop again if they don't have to stop again, and that's going to be dictated by tire wear. They do not have to stop Bottas again per the regulations. They have used both compounds so far in this race, so as far as the FIA is concerned, they do not have to stop again. Meanwhile, one of the Toro Rossos, that's Kvyat, coming out of the pits there. He is followed by Lance Stroll. And the FIA doing FIA things. We're not going to get a ruling on Verstappen and Leclerc until after the race. So whatever happens on track, don't believe it. And there's the official notification from race control. Leclerc and Verstappen, they will investigate that after the race. Undoubtedly, they want to talk to both drivers, but for the fans, that's not really what we like to see. We like to be able to get a result on track and know that it's going to stand. Meanwhile, new race lap record for Valtteri Bottas, 132.137. That's currently fastest lap of the race. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, these tires are now 20 laps old as far as the Grand Prix is concerned. He's been on the soft tires since the start. And, well, they're starting to get a little bit tired looking, particularly on the right-hand side, at least according to the on-screen graphics. You can start to see that there's a bit of a black line running down the middle of those tires. That's generally what we expect to see when they start to wear. Meanwhile, Albon overtaking one of the racing points. I believe that was Lance Stroll. Kevin Magnussen and Kimi Räikkönen squabbling over P17. Räikkönen has it. Magnussen wants it. Believe we're going to see positions maintaining their current positions right now. And indeed they do. Lewis Hamilton quite obviously wanting to stay out as long as possible. Those tires are not going to allow him to do it for much longer. Meanwhile, Albon, he is hounding Daniel Ricciardo for P5. Mercedes radio to Bottas, meanwhile, saying Lewis will be out of the way soon. Out of the way right now for Alex Albon is Daniel Ricciardo as he flashes by with DRS assistance into turn 1. The sole remaining Red Bull Honda in this race, putting on a good show for the home crowd. Finish up that point on the team radio to Bottas. That means, obviously, Hamilton will be stopping soon. Lewis Hamilton coming up on Robert Kubica now to put him a lap down. This must be when Mercedes pit him. And indeed it is. Lewis Hamilton, race leader, is in. Valtteri Bottas will resume the race lead. Hamilton coming into his box any time now. Here is the world champion all the way down to the end of the pit lane where Mercedes have set up shop. Into the box. Soft tires coming off the car. Medium tires going on and already released. That was a 2.9 second stop. Slightly slower than Valtteri Bottas' stop a few laps ago, but still plenty quick. Hamilton resumes in P3, just ahead of Carlos Sainz. So this is now turning into a tale of two strategies. We've got Ferrari on a definitive two-stop strategy. We have Mercedes with the option to go to the end of the race. We don't know if they'll be able to go to the end of the race on those tires, but both Mercedes cars went from soft to medium, so to the regulations, they do not have to stop again. Tire wear dependent, of course. Sebastian Vettel absolutely must stop at least one more time to go onto those medium tires. Speaking of tires, Carlos Sainz still has not made his first pit stop. We're on lap 23 of 53. His tires actually visually look just fine. Meanwhile, Karun Chandok saying that Mercedes apparently told Lewis Hamilton that a one-stop strategy might not work. So then, I have to wonder why they've decided to go onto these medium tires so soon, if they are planning on stopping again. Ferrari obviously attempting to do an undercut with another set of the softs. Mercedes are going to be ready to go back onto the softs for their final stint if they do stop again. Now, that will put them at an advantage because Sebastian Vettel will necessarily be on the softs at the end, unless they, for some reason, decided to do a third stop, which I highly doubt. So they may just cancel each other out at some point. Ferrari will be quicker right now, at least in theory, on the quicker tire. And Mercedes will be quicker at the end, should they have to stop again. And yes, Mercedes did tell Lewis Hamilton, deg looks very high. That's degradation. Looks very high, so a one-stop will be a struggle. Lewis Hamilton asking his engineers, why didn't we go on to the hard tires then if degradation is so high? Lewis Hamilton does not want to have to stop again, and at this point, again, to the regulations, he does not have to stop again, but the tire wear probably, at least according to Mercedes, is going to dictate that he does. Meanwhile, zooming into the damage on the Mercedes there, Lewis Hamilton also appears to be missing a mirror, but on the right-hand side of that car, so there is damage on that Mercedes. Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly has overtaken Lando Norris. That was for P9. On board with Lewis Hamilton, and yes, we can confirm he is missing his right-hand mirror now. Didn't catch that before with the onboard, but it is plainly visible. Yes, Jonathan, it's not entirely clear how Hamilton received that damage, but I would not be surprised if it was due to the debris coming off of the car of Charles Leclerc earlier on. We saw that front wing end fence completely disintegrate as Leclerc was going down the back straight, and Lewis Hamilton was almost directly behind him at that time. There were some rather large pieces that went back toward the Mercedes, and obviously if you're hitting them at high speed, they could do some serious damage. Lewis Hamilton again asking the pits, why did you put me on the medium? He wanted to go on the hards. He does not want to make another pit stop. Knowing Lewis Hamilton, he's going to do everything in his power to make sure he doesn't have to do another pit stop, but to what expense? This is where these guys earn their money. Meanwhile, watching the midfield battle, Stroll, Norris, Hulkenberg, and Perez. They're all squabbling over P10 in the final point. Meanwhile, Perez all over the gearbox of Lando Norris down the back straight, heading up to 130R. Perez ducking back into the slipstream before getting into 130R. He actually has to drop back quite a bit to make sure that he's got enough downforce to make it around that corner. Such is the turbulent air that comes off the back of one of these Formula One cars. But Perez will have DRS. He doesn't need it, though, because Norris dives into the pits. Charles Leclerc into the pits again. Onto the soft tires. Leclerc is good to go to the end. At this point, I would say, will the soft tires do another 25 laps or so? I don't know. But they're going to try. Leclerc resumes in P12. Meanwhile, Nico Hulkenberg going around Daniel Kvyat. Coming into Spoon. This could end in tears. Be careful, gentlemen. Nico Hulkenberg, he had some sort of issue in Q2. He dropped out of qualifying. Apparently, that Renault is once again healthy. Hulkenberg will probably hold back now until the start-finish straight when he can get a DRS assist. Coming down onto start-finish on board with Hulkenberg. Kvyat doing some regen there on the straight. Hulkenberg with DRS assist. This should be an easy maneuver. Got Perez in the background trying to slipstream off of Hulkenberg around Kvyat, and he makes it happen. Daniel Kvyat all of a sudden found himself losing 2 positions in one corner. Hulkenberg in P8, Perez now P10, Hulkenberg P9 rather. That's 9th and 10th. Hulkenberg and Perez. Kvyat now out of the points in P11. In replay on board with Perez. Just opportunistic driving there from Perez. He wanted to get around Kvyat as well. He used the slipstream from Nico Hulkenberg to get that last bit of straight line speed over the Toro Rosso, and it worked. Speaking of Toro Rossos and Daniel Kvyat, here's Charles Leclerc all over the back of Daniel Kvyat again. Is he going to try to take him into Spoon once again? Yes, he is. And once again, he does it. Charles Leclerc now up into P11. Daniel Kvyat going backwards in a hurry. Meanwhile, working lap 28 of 53, Valtteri Bottas continues to lead this race to the tune of 10.732 seconds over Sebastian Vettel. Lewis Hamilton in third, 6.8 seconds behind Vettel. He's slowly bringing that gap down. Remember, Mercedes and Ferrari effectively on opposite strategies at this time. Ferrari absolutely have to pit to put on a set of the medium or hard tires. Lewis Hamilton good to go as far as the regulations are concerned, as is Valtteri Bottas. Albon, a fine showing so far for the Thai driver in fourth. Daniel Ricciardo fifth. Carlos Sainz sixth. Pierre Gasly seventh. Lance Stroll eighth. Hülkenberg in ninth. And Perez in 10th. We see those two on your screen right now. Charles Leclerc in P11, trying to close down the gap to Sergio Perez. Lewis Hamilton absolutely not happy at all. Had some choice words for his engineers there in team radio, telling him that they have to close the gap to Sebastian Vettel. Hamilton not really in the mood to be closing a gap right now, but he is doing it slowly but surely. Meanwhile, on board with Sebastian Vettel in P2. Gap holding reasonably steady between he and Valtteri Bottas for the lead, hovering around 10.8 to 11 seconds. Sebastian Vettel trying to figure out a little bit of mental gymnastics, trying to see if they can try to do the undercut on Bottas. Again, Vettel, in theory, should have the advantage right now on the softer tire, but really does not appear to be the case. He is about 0.6 per lap slower than Valtteri Bottas at this time. On board with Charles Leclerc, he's now caught up with Sergio Perez. This is for P10. What does Charles Leclerc have in his quiver right now? Not quite close enough to try anything into 130R as he did earlier on. He should be in DRS range down start-finish, barring disaster in the final chicane coming up. On board, Charles Leclerc coming down start-finish. He has DRS, but Sergio Perez up ahead also has DRS, so that should pretty much negate itself. Leclerc really unable to gain appreciably on the racing point. However, through the first corner, he's really able to gain. The Ferrari just has so much better grip in those medium speed corners. Charles Leclerc really gaining through the S's now. Up into the hairpin, this could be interesting, depending on what sort of a gap he's able to maintain through Degner. That's looking good so far for Leclerc. On the power a little bit earlier than the racing point up ahead. Don't call it a Force India, Ferrari man. Into the hairpin, Leclerc taking a wider line than those ahead. And he does get better grip coming out of there. Is he going to try his now signature move into Spoon? Yes, he is. Diving to the inside on the approach to Spoon. He's made the move before the corner. Nicely done. Charles Leclerc, he is now up into P9. Nico Hülkenberg will be his next target, and he is immediately up the road, both in the same camera shot. Charles Leclerc should have DRS on Hülkenberg down start-finish. In replay, watching that move, Leclerc had that move done well before Spoon curve. Very well measured by the young Monegasque. Down to start-finish. Watch the rear wing. It pops open on the back of the Ferrari. It does not pop open on the back of the Renault. Charles Leclerc able to gain all sorts of track position. However, not quite close enough to go for an overtake. Doesn't mean he's not thinking about it, though. Look at this into turn 1 and 2. Again, the Ferrari so much better in those medium speed corners than the Renault. All through the S's, the Ferrari does have better grip, but the Renault appears to have slightly better power out going up the hill. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel in the pit lane. This is going to be a pivotal moment here. He needs to go onto the medium or the hard tires. Which one do Ferrari pick? I believe it will be the mediums, and indeed, it is a set of the yellow sidewall medium tires going on to the SF90. Ferrari released Vettel back into the race. 2.5 seconds was the pit stop time. Vettel leaves the pit lane and rejoins in P3. At this point, if you are Mercedes, you've got yourself a question to ask. You're on the medium tires right now. Sebastian Vettel is now on the medium tires as well, so you're equally matched in that regard. However, Vettel's medium tires are significantly newer than yours. So what do you do? If you're able to maintain a gap, stay out, quite obviously, but being able to maintain a gap is quite a big question mark right now. Your tires are far older than those of your immediate opposition. You don't have to stop again. However, it may be worth it. Kevin Magnussen letting Lewis Hamilton through there. A lap down. Lewis Hamilton to the pit saying that his tires are still good. He really doesn't want to stop again. I was sure that he would do everything in his power to ensure that he does not have to stop again. Perhaps that will yet be the case. Yes, absolutely. Ferrari did a good stop on that. Did a good job on that stop for Sebastian Vettel. It is 2:05 in the morning here. My brain's starting to shut down on me. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc looking all over the back of Lance Stroll. He has DRS. Easily done. Down the inside into turn 1. Charles Leclerc now up into P7. The Sky Sports commentators, they're making a good point. Again, Verstappen and Leclerc are still under investigation, and we won't get a decision on that until after the race. So if you are Charles Leclerc, you've just got to keep going for it right now because you don't know what your penalty will be or even if you will receive a penalty at all. So whatever it is, whether it's a time penalty or at worst case an outright disqualification, which undoubtedly won't happen at this point. We would definitely know about that. But you don't know if you're going to be penalized, and if you are, you don't know what it is. So you've just got to go for it. And going for it, he is. Charles Leclerc all over the back of Pierre Gasly through turns 1 and 2. Coming into the S's, Gasly defends very hard coming into the S's. Leclerc will not be amused by this, definitely being held up by the Toro Rosso. Coming into Degner 1. And Degner 2. Keep your head about you, Chuck. Don't try to dive bomb into the hairpin, and indeed he does not try to do that. He will get a great run on him out of the hairpin, though. Again, Charles is liking the spoon curve today, and I think he's going to try to do something into here. He's a little bit of a long way back. Will he try it? Yes, he does try it. And he goes through again. That's 3 for 3 in spoon for Charles Leclerc. He's now up into P6. Meanwhile, Alex Albon back into the pit lane, going on to the soft tires. Good stop by the Red Bull boys. 2.5 seconds. Well, for whatever it's worth, and we don't really know what it's worth right now, Charles Leclerc has been putting on a good show today. He's up into P6, having started second and being as far back as last in this race. Great recovery drive nonetheless. Meanwhile, here's your race leader. Haven't seen too much of him today. Valtteri Bottas leads this Grand Prix by 13.7 seconds over teammate Lewis Hamilton. He's having a very quiet afternoon, and I'm sure he's very happy about that. On board with Lewis Hamilton right now, coming up to a back marker. It's one of the Alfa Romeos. I believe that's Antonio Giovinazzi in P13. Yes, Suzuka is one of the all-time great racetracks. And how about this? We have good races at places like Spa, Monza, Suzuka. What do these places have in common? They weren't designed by Herman Tilke. Cough, cough. Jonathan Straitman, do they have DRS before Spoon Corner? No, they do not. That run up to Spoon is a corner in its own right. Of course, it's totally flat in these Formula One cars, but opening up the DRS around there, even though it's not so much of a corner for cars like these, would not work so well, I would venture to say. So no DRS. Meanwhile, Mercedes running out into the pit lane with a set of soft tires. Is this a real stop, or is this Mercedes trying to sell a dummy to us? Valtteri Bottas dives into the pit lane. Race leader is in. He's going to go onto the soft tires. Mercedes, they don't have to stop again per the regulations, but they are stopping again. They can't make the mediums last the rest of the Grand Prix. That is now confirmed. Bottas coming down to the end of the pit lane to his pit stall. He turns in, brings the Mercedes to a stop. Off go the mediums, on go the softs, and released is Valtteri Bottas back into the race. Lewis Hamilton inherits the race lead for the moment. Valtteri Bottas resumes in P2, 8.6 seconds back from Lewis Hamilton as of the time he resumed. Now 9 seconds exactly. Scuderia Casey Dixon. Yes, the gameplay footage is R Factor 2. Meanwhile, back on board with Sebastian Vettel running in P3. Who is that immediately in front of us? That's not Bottas, is it? Not quite close enough to identify that car. That actually is Valtteri Bottas immediately in front of us. How about that? This is interesting now. Bottas on the faster tire and now on the newer tire. Is Vettel going to be able to overtake him? And if he is able to overtake him, guess what? That is the race lead on aggregate, assuming that Lewis Hamilton is stopping again. And if Bottas had to stop again, Hamilton is going to have to stop again at this rate. Lewis Hamilton asking his engineers, tell me what I have to do to win this race. Well, to win the race, Lewis, you have to cross start-finish on lap 53 before any other car crosses start-finish on lap 53. And if you can manage to do that, you'll win the race. $15 to go. Lewis Hamilton, your race leader on the pit stop rotation right now. He's going to try to make himself the race leader at the end. Don't quite see how he's going to manage that, given that his teammate was on the same tires, and he just had to make a pit stop. Bottas in P2 at the moment, 8.9 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Sebastian Vettel, P3, and he just set the fastest lap of the race at the moment. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen in his interview right now with Sky Sports definitely putting the blame on Charles Leclerc for the incident between those two. He says it was irresponsible driving. Quite honestly, I saw somebody struggling on cold tires at turn 2, lap 1, and Max, sort of, you drove into a disappearing wedge right there. But then again, at that very corner, back here about 30 years ago, what did we see? We saw, if you no longer go for a gap, that sort of thing. Meanwhile, in replay, Lando Norris getting it all kinds of wrong in turn 1. He gets away with it, though. Had a lot of straight line speed going into the corner. Braked way too late. Thankfully, there's curbing there nowadays and not gravel. Meanwhile, cameras have picked up Charles Leclerc. He's in P6 at the moment. A few seconds back from Carlos Sainz in P5. Great recovery drive by the number 2 Ferrari driver today. Pretty much he is running all alone. He has got 13 seconds back to Pierre Gasly in P7. That should be a pretty unassailable gap at the moment, assuming that he gets a 10-second time penalty. And at this point, we don't know if any penalties are forthcoming for Charles Leclerc. He will maintain 6th position. Charles Leclerc in replay. Front end of that car bouncing all over the place in Degner, throwing up sparks from the front wing. He does not go off the track, though. Just a rough ride there for Charles Leclerc. Camera's now picking up Lewis Hamilton going through the S's in Sector 1. Again, he is your race leader on aggregate right now. He's trying to make himself the race leader outright. If he has to make another pit stop, he will rejoin at this time behind Sebastian Vettel. We need to see what's going to happen with this. In theory, Hamilton should have to stop again, but 12 laps to go. Is he willing to hold out on these medium tires? Meanwhile, Mercedes, they need to outscore Ferrari by 14 points today to win the Constructors' Championship. And at this point, are they in position to do that? I think they are. Charles Leclerc with a big lockup heading into the chicane at the end of the lap. And I'll put a flat spot on those tires. Camera's picking up Valtteri Bottas, who should be your race leader right now, but he's not. Lewis Hamilton is doing Lewis Hamilton things up at the front. I will say at this point, with 11 laps to go, if Lewis Hamilton does manage to win this race, it will be really a dark horse performance like we haven't seen in a while. He's been nowhere this weekend, pretty much, and there it is. He is your race leader right now. Bottas very slowly is closing the gap a little bit, but undoubtedly Mercedes will be telling him, hey, we could win the Constructors' Championship today. Don't go for the gap. .7 seconds is the gap between Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. What will Lewis Hamilton do? Mercedes probably want him to come in again, radio. And they didn't play the radio. Apparently it wasn't fit for broadcast. Now they're playing it, and Hamilton pits. Hamilton is in the pits. Valtteri Bottas will inherit the race lead at this point. Lewis Hamilton is not happy about this. That I can assure you all. Lewis Hamilton will be fuming right now. Let's see. What do those tires look like? They look okay. They honestly look okay. Could they have done another 10 laps? Maybe. I think it might have been worth the risk if you're Lewis Hamilton, but Mercedes undoubtedly thinking about the Constructors' Championship right now. Valtteri Bottas retakes the lead of the Japanese Grand Prix on lap 43 of 53. Sebastian Vettel is in second position right now. Lewis Hamilton rejoins in P3. He is 5 seconds behind the Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel. Driver of the Day voting is now open for those of you who are now interested. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't really know who should get it at this point. Valtteri Bottas has done a great job. Charles Leclerc, despite, you could argue, his error at the start, hitting Max Verstappen and ultimately taking him out of the race, he's done an absolutely great job. Sebastian Vettel definitely has not done a great job. He bungled that start big time. He could have been leading this race from lights to flag had he not done that. Drivers of the Day contenders, they abound today. Ferrari telling Charles Leclerc, if we stop now, you'd need to clear 6 cars. Leclerc responding, why would we stop right now? Ferrari say, fastest lap. No, not worth it at this point. On board with Lewis Hamilton with much newer tires now, but undoubtedly a much more demoralized demeanor underneath that helmet. Lewis Hamilton now within 3 seconds of Sebastian Vettel for second position. He is a man on a mission. He is not at all happy about having to make that pit stop and effectively surrender this potential race win to his teammate. However, he could be in a position to make this a Mercedes 1-2. On board with Nico Hülkenberg in replay. Locking up going into the final chicane there. Team orders going on there at Renault. Daniel Ricciardo going past Nico Hülkenberg. Sebastian Vettel, cameras catching back up with him going through the final chicane. Lewis Hamilton is just 2.3 seconds down the road. Undoubtedly, Hamilton is going to try to get himself into striking distance. He's just set fastest lap again, 131.538. New race lap record, I believe. And once again, Lewis Hamilton resetting fastest lap, 130.983. The gap is now 1.5 seconds. Yes, on Daniel Ricciardo moving to Renault this year. I don't know what bucket of lies Cyril and his ilk were able to sell Daniel Ricciardo, because he absolutely had it made at Red Bull. Yes, you could argue Red Bull are trying to make Max Verstappen the golden boy, and they very much have done. But Renault have been nowhere near the front since they won the World Championship for the last time, all the way back in 2006. So there was never a chance of that car being competitive. I don't know why Ricciardo chose to go there. And quite honestly, I don't know why Red Bull chose to get rid of him. I understand that he definitely wanted equal footing with Verstappen. Red Bull were not totally willing to give that to him, but at the same time, what have Red Bull been doing so far this year? They've been squabbling around with their number 2 driver, swapping positions with the sister team. If you put Ricciardo and Verstappen in the same team, okay, maybe they butt heads a little bit as teammates, but they're going to deliver results for you. Had Red Bull just given Ricciardo what he wanted financially, perhaps he would have been able to deal with playing second fiddle on occasion. I don't see a winner for either party. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel are now well and truly in the same camera shot. Have a look at that. You can almost count the gap manually here. The gap is just under 1 second. Timing and scoring showing it at 0.701, now 0.524. On board, looking back from Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton absolutely is on it. He has newer tires than Vettel. They're on the same tires, of course. Or are they not? Sebastian Vettel went on to the mediums. He did not stop again. Nope, they're not on the same tires. Again, it is 2:27 in the morning here. I'm really having to remember things. Hamilton is on the softs. Vettel is on the mediums. Vettel's mediums are far older than Hamilton's softs. Charles Leclerc in the pits, going for fastest lap undoubtedly. They are safe to Gasly in the back, 23 seconds. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton is all over the back of Sebastian Vettel. We are about to see a Mercedes 1-2, ladies and gentlemen. Hamilton has DRS on the Ferrari in front. The gap is closing. Will it close before turn 1? No, it doesn't. Hamilton thinking about diving down the inside. However, he's unable to do it. Hamilton washes away big time behind the Ferrari in that turbulent wake. Hamilton will definitely be within striking distance heading into Spoon, I will say. Will he attempt the maneuver that Charles Leclerc has been able to do all day? I don't know. Perhaps this is the time that Toto gets on the radio to tell Lewis, this is Toto. We are ready to win the Constructors' Championship. Don't do anything stupid. In the run-up to Spoon, Hamilton is quite a ways removed from Sebastian Vettel right now. We won't be seeing any Charles Leclerc maneuvers here. Mercedes is able to gain on the Ferrari all the way through, though. A little bit of understeer from the outwash coming off of Vettel's car. But Hamilton is basically half a second a lap faster than Sebastian Vettel at this time. Five laps to go. Race leader Valtteri Bottas has trip timing and scoring there at start-finish. Lewis Hamilton with DRS once again on the Ferraris, a little bit closer than he was last time. The gap on track closes. However, not quite fast enough. Jonathan Straitman asking, is my McLaren MP420 collection still growing? No, it is at 3 right now. 2 Montoya cars and 1 Raikkonen car, and I don't think it's going to be growing anytime soon. It's the only car of which I have 3, and I don't really think I want any more at this point. I undoubtedly have the highest concentration of 1/18 scale MP420s in the entire state of New Jersey, and perhaps even on the east coast of the United States at this point. Regardless, Lewis Hamilton continuing to close on Sebastian Vettel. They're coming into some back markers now, so this is going to be interesting. Vettel should have DRS if he's smart about it. Perez lets Vettel and Hamilton through very wisely. Did Vettel go past the DRS detection point, though, before overtaking the racing point? I don't know. I don't think he did. No, the rear wing is still closed on Vettel's car. It's open on Hamilton's. Meanwhile, 3 laps to go at this point, working lap 50 of 53. Lewis Hamilton is just 0.4 behind Sebastian Vettel, but he has been unable to convert that track position into an overtake. He's running out of time now. Lewis Hamilton taking a wider line into the hairpin than the cars in front of him. That does enable him to get a little bit of a better launch out of the corner, but he does sacrifice some speed on initial turn-in. Lap traffic continuing to yield very smartly. And Hamilton really gaining on Sebastian Vettel through Spoon. He's now going to have an absolutely wonderful slipstream down the back straight. Are we going to be seeing any sort of overtakes heading into 130R? No. However, now with just 3 laps to go here, Lewis Hamilton is going to have to get a little inventive. He's tucked right up underneath the rear wing now of the Ferrari heading down start-finish. He'll have DRS for sure. And now the lap traffic is going to come into the equation. Remember Overtake the Michael at Spa all those years ago? Here we go. Sebastian Vettel goes inside. Hamilton goes outside. That almost ended in tears for Hamilton. Very nearly threw it off the road there, but both drivers continue. This battle continues through the S's for another time. We have 2 more times past the flag stand after this lap. Let's see. Vettel and Hamilton are now clear of all the lap traffic. This is a straight fight to the end once again. Hamilton taking a little bit more road again in the hairpin. He's able to close up through the middle of the corner, but then Vettel gets on the throttle that fraction earlier, and it's enough to pull a gap out before they get back into Spoon. Through the second part of Spoon, Hamilton was able to close right up on Vettel on the last lap. There's a much healthier gap now between these two cars. Ferrari telling Sebastian Vettel, spark 4 for more performance. Remember Ferrari and Suzuka and spark plugs going back to 2017. Are we tempting fate now? And yes, on your screen right now, Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton, there are 9 world championships nose to tail right now. Lewis Hamilton to Mercedes saying, I need more power. Ferrari have already given Sebastian Vettel more power. Mercedes, go into your party mode. One and a half laps to the end here. Valtteri Bottas is well on his way to win the Japanese Grand Prix. The real battle here is for second place. Will it be Sebastian Vettel or Lewis Hamilton? We are about to find out the resolution to this. Vettel is amazingly able to pull away a little bit from the Mercedes down the back straight. Hamilton starts to gain again a little bit at VMAX. However, as soon as the speeds drop back down below that, the gap builds once again. Hamilton is going to have to do it right now going into turn 1 if he's going to be able to do it at all. They are just beginning the final tour of this Suzuka circuit. Valtteri Bottas, your race leader, already well on his final lap. Final lap beginning now for these two. Does Hamilton try anything into turn 1? He's not close enough. Going into turn 2. Vettel left the door open for a moment, and then he closed it again on the inside. Through the S's for the final time for these two. 9 world championships between them. Two of the most decorated drivers in Formula One history right now battling before your eyes. And that is a crash for one of the racing points. That is Sergio Perez. He has gone off. That is in Sector 1. That is on the exit of Turn 2. That will not affect the battle for second place. Coming up to the hairpin are Vettel and Hamilton. There is a back marker between them. Sergio Perez appeared to be fine in that Turn 2 incident. He's off the track into the barriers. Sebastian Vettel pulling away a little bit from Hamilton into Spoon. Time running out now for Lewis Hamilton. I don't think he's going to be able to do anything. Meanwhile, Valtteri Bottas crossing start-finish. He wins the Japanese Grand Prix. We are waiting for the resolution of the fight of the second-place finishers here. Sebastian Vettel does it. He holds off Lewis Hamilton to take second place. Lewis Hamilton in third, the final podium position. Fastest lap of the race, though, goes to Lewis Hamilton. And Mercedes, for another year, have just won the Formula One Constructors World Championship. 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and now 2019. Mercedes-AMG Petronas winning the Formula One Constructors Championship. Meanwhile, in replay, Sergio Perez just lost the rear end through turn 2. Backed it into the barriers there on the outside of the circuit. Wait a second. Nope, there was help. There was definitely help with that one. That was one of the Toro Rossos impacting Perez on the right rear. Who was that? Was that Gasly or Kvyat? I don't know. That's an interesting question. Will Mercedes be quitting when McLaren is running Mercedes engines in 2021? At this point, I don't see any reason for Mercedes to think anything other than we're going to be running next year and we're going to be running for all the years after that until we no longer win the Constructors' Championship every year. 6 consecutive Constructors' Championships for Mercedes. That is something that we really haven't seen too many times before. Ferrari won it in 99, 2000, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that is 6 consecutive Constructors' Championships again. So Mercedes equal what Ferrari were able to do at the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st. On board with Lewis Hamilton there. He scores 1 extra point for the fastest lap. Sounds a bit dejected on the radio. Meanwhile, the top 3 finishers pull into Parc Fermé. Race winner Valtteri Bottas switches the car off, prepares to climb out. Victory to the Finn, who in many ways has been resurgent this year. He had an absolutely brilliant lights to flag victory in Australia, and a little bit of a tail off mid-year, but he very much has come back this weekend. Victory to Valtteri Bottas. This is 100th points finish, and his victory heralds Mercedes' 6th Constructors' World Championship. At this same place, basically in those same parking spaces, one remembers the end of the 2000 Japanese Grand Prix, with Michael Schumacher taking the Drivers' Championship away from Mika Hakkinen in those absolutely biblical scenes in Parc Fermé. The pure release of adrenaline from Michael Schumacher, realizing that he finally achieved the goal of winning the Drivers' Championship with Ferrari. 4 long years with that team eventually came good. We're celebrating another World Championship today. Not on the driver's side, but a 6th consecutive Constructors' title for Mercedes. That is something that we've only seen once before. Well earned. McLaren and Mercedes for 2021, going back to that legendary livery they had from 1997 to 2005. Well, it would be really cool. However, I think that livery was more or less defined by the presence of West Tobacco as their title sponsor, and obviously we're not going to be seeing that anytime soon again. Maybe we'll see more silver on the McLarens, but I don't think we're going to see that iconic silver, white, gray, black, and red livery anymore. Sim Racing 604, once before, who did that 6 consecutive Constructors' Championships? It was Ferrari. 1999 to 2004, they won the Constructors' Championship every year. Valtteri Bottas there being his typically measured and muted self there. You just won the Japanese Grand Prix. That's one of the races that any driver wants to win, and doesn't really seem to be too enthusiastic about it. Perhaps it's a Finn thing. Sebastian Vettel, meanwhile, our pole sitter today. These guys have had a long day in the office. They did a full qualifying session. They had about a 2-hour break, and then they just did a 2-hour Grand Prix. And they still all look remarkably fresh. If there's any doubt that these guys are elite athletes, remove it right now. Yeah, that's a cool idea, actually, to have the safety car for Formula One be an old F1 car. I think it would be really interesting to see. The problem with it would be is if the safety car had to be brought out because of poor track conditions, if the conditions are unsafe for a Formula One car to run, having a Formula One car be the safety car would not really solve the problem now, would it? Obviously, it'd be well quick enough to make sure that these guys would be able to keep their tires and brakes warm, but the safety car generally is out there to slow the field down. F2004 is a safety car. Renault R25 is a safety car. I mean, we could have fun with that all day long. And again, it would be really cool to see. I mean, to have I'd love to have the Tyrrell P34 be the safety car or something like that. There are a few of those around the world that still run. That'd be really interesting to see. But again, if it's too wet, for example, for Formula One cars to run, if your safety car is a Formula One car, you kind of still have the same problem you did in the beginning. Meanwhile, your final race results there, your top three, Valtteri Bottas winning the race over Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton. Honestly, that was a great drive by all three of those guys. Definitely the worst performer there had to be Sebastian Vettel. He lost this race right at the start, didn't he? He had that absolutely bungled race start, and, well, who knows really what might have happened. He did get lucky, though, because he did not get a penalty for a jump start. I think we could argue whether or not that actually was a jump start. However, he did not leave his grid slot before the red lights went out, so I suppose that's what they're defining as a jump start or not. Drivers have made their way into the prep room. They, for the first time, now get to see the results. Remember, we are still awaiting the outcome of that investigation into Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. Turn 2, lap 1. Final results as they cross the line. Valtteri Bottas wins the race over Sebastian Vettel. Lewis Hamilton in third. Alex Albon finishing in fourth. Carlos Sainz in fifth. Charles Leclerc sixth. Daniel Ricciardo seventh. Pierre Gasly eighth. Nico Hulkenberg ninth. And Lance Stroll in 10th. Daniel Kvyat 11th. Norris 12th. Raikkonen 13th. Grosjean 14th. Giovinazzi 15th. Magnussen 16th. Perez 17th. And DNF officially for Sergio Perez because he did crash. 18th for George Russell, 19th Robert Kubica, and 20th, and also not classified, Max Verstappen. We are now waiting for the drivers to make their way out onto the podium. And the fans from the main grandstand, at least, are being allowed onto the start-finish straight. We typically see this at tracks around the world. And that stiff breeze from this morning is still blowing hard over Suzuka. And it is so typically Japan out there. All those fans flooding the circuit right now. In other places, you would see absolutely crazy scenes with people setting off smoke flares and things. But Japan, no, everybody just filing out there very orderly, very quietly. Drivers making their way out onto the podium now. Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, and your race winner, Valtteri Bottas, stand by for the Finnish and German national anthems. The national anthems of Finland and Germany ring out over Suzuka, race winner Valtteri Bottas, and Mercedes, winning their 6th Constructors' Championship today. The winner's trophy there presented by the mayor of the Mie Prefecture. Undoubtedly, he's been a very busy man over the last 72 hours. There's Mercedes accepting the trophy for the winning constructor. That one will make its way back to Brackley and undoubtedly be locked away in the trophy cabinet immediately. It now has 5 other siblings of the race trophy for the day that clinched the Constructors' Championship. And there you go, Valtteri Bottas doing his country proud. He drinks a fair amount of the champagne before deciding to spray it. Actually somewhat surprised to see them spraying the champagne today, considering what's been going on about 100 miles to the north of Suzuka. Jonathan Straitman, yes, being 9 in the morning there. Typically, that's when the races are on for us over here in the United States, when they're in Europe. Japan and China and when we used to go there, Malaysia, they were always in the middle of the night for us. Singapore, of course, is on pretty much at a normal time, early in the morning, because it is a night race over there in Asia. Is there a single good F1 track in Asia aside from Suzuka? Well, the Pacific Grand Prix, which I believe last occurred in 1994, the Aida circuit there, also in Japan. That's a pretty cool one. It's available on iRacing. It might be available for R Factor 2 as well. I don't know for sure, though. Fuji. I like Fuji. A lot of people don't. I think it's a cool place. Formula One last went to Fuji in 2008. It hosted the Japanese Grand Prix. I thought that was pretty cool. And it's never hosted Formula One, but Motegi is a really cool track as well. Meanwhile, Sky Sports and via ESPN right now are airing a feature on Mercedes. Karun Chandhok had a go at Silverstone in the current Mercedes car quite recently, and apparently we're seeing some shots of that right now. However, Mercedes and their hospitality team have broken out the champagne to serve every member of the team. It seems to be what they do when they win the Constructors' Championship. And a clarification on that Sky Sports claim that Mercedes are the first team to win 6 consecutive Constructors' Championships. That's not true. Ferrari did the same between 1999 and 2004. However, they are the first team to win 6 consecutive Constructors' and Drivers' Championships. Of course, Lewis Hamilton won it in 2014, 2015, Nico Rosberg in 2016, and Hamilton has won it from 2017 through 2019, effectively. He hasn't clinched it yet, but he's very close to doing so. Honestly, I think McLaren are kicking themselves for letting Mercedes go. Lewis Hamilton, and everybody said that he was completely wrong and totally out of his mind at the time when he decided to go to Mercedes in 2013. And before his death earlier this year, Niki Lauda talked about the process of getting Lewis Hamilton to sign for Mercedes. And Hamilton asked him, how come I would drive for you? Because you guys are well behind my current team in the Constructors' Championship, and Niki Lauda basically just said, hey, yeah, you're right about that, but I can promise you that I'm going to do everything working like hell, like you do not believe, to make sure that I give you a competitive car. And apparently Niki Lauda was able to persuade Hamilton with that logic, and, well, you see the fruits of that labor. 2013, Hamilton's first season with the team. Not so great, winning a few races there, but 2014 to 2019, winning the Constructors' Championship, and Lewis Hamilton winning the Constructors' Championship 4 times so far with Mercedes. That's pretty cool. Of course, Hamilton also, because McLaren had a factory Mercedes deal at the time in terms of the engine supply, he would have known that Mercedes were developing a test unit for these V6 turbo hybrid power plants. They were running a single-cylinder test rig on their dynos in Brixworth and in Stuttgart all the way back in 2010. So they knew that these regs were probably coming, and they were well ahead of everybody else in developing for them. So Hamilton undoubtedly knowing that Mercedes were going to have the best engine, and it was unclear at that time as to whether or not McLaren would keep the Mercedes engines. So he decided, hey, let me go with the Mercedes factory team, and there it was. Now, Sky Sports running this graphic on the bottom of the screen saying that Mercedes have scored a 6th consecutive Constructors' and Drivers' Championship double. That's not true right now. Lewis Hamilton has not won the World Championship yet. Yeah, you guys liked the face reveal. I wish I could have done it amid better circumstances, quite honestly. Of course, Mike from Sim Racing 604, he's joined us today in this chat, and I'm very happy to see him there. But, of course, I'm sad to see him having to leave YouTube. And again, I just wish him well in whatever it is that he wants to do next. I know that he's got a real life going on, and he needs to be at 100% to be able to attend to the needs of his family. So again, I just wish him well, and I thank him for everything that he's done for sim racing on YouTube. Sky Sports still talking to Total Wolf here. They've gone to the subject of Niki Lauda, and undoubtedly he would have been very happy to see today, with Mercedes winning their 6th title. Toto saying that they want to dedicate this Constructors' Championship win to his memory. And Sky Sports via ESPN, we've lost the world feed. I don't know what happened to it, and I don't think it's coming back. However, 2 weeks from now, we will be in Mexico City, and we'll be in North America for some Grand Prix action in the middle of the day, which is a change of pace for what we usually see here, at least in the United States. So that'll be an interesting time. The Mexican Grand Prix is always pretty cool. Drivers' Championship still to play for here. However, it is now between the two Mercedes drivers. Lewis Hamilton is set to become the first 6-time world champion since Michael Schumacher did it in 2003. The Constructors' Championship now done. And again, we have lost the world feed from FOM, and I don't think it's coming back. However, being just past 3 in the morning now for us, I have been up all day and all night, and it's time for us basically to say, yeah, that's a wrap for this. Doing qualifying and the race, 2 live streams on the same day. Last time that we had qualifying and the race on the same day, I believe, was 2004. So I've not seen this in my tenure of being a Formula One fan, and it's cool to be able to have the opportunity now to share it with all of you in real time on the internet. Magical place we have. In terms of the Mexican Grand Prix, will I be watching the race live? Yep, absolutely I will be. Sebastian Vettel was on pole, Jack. Any concluding thoughts, any concluding questions from anybody before we sign off here? Yes, today's race, definitely it happened. was honestly, it was a very opportunistic and very consistent, good drive from Valtteri Bottas. I think he got driver of the day, and I think he deserved it. And quite honestly, doesn't matter. He won the race, and he certainly deserved to be winning that race. Very opportunistic at the start. Sebastian Vettel's misfortune turned into Bottas's favor, and he held on to it the whole way. Lewis Hamilton, he definitely drove his heart out trying to win that race. Eventually, he absolutely had to pit. Mercedes thinking about the Constructors' Championship. And there it was. Japanese Grand Prix. We were very much in doubt as to whether or not it would happen at all. Typhoon impacting Japan yesterday and the day before. All Saturday activities canceled. Qualifying earlier today. The Grand Prix later on. Pretty good race. Tale of two strategies between Mercedes and Ferrari. Ultimately, Mercedes and Ferrari basically canceled each other out in that regard. Bottas able to win. Vettel able to come in second. Unfortunate for Charles Leclerc, and again, we are still waiting on what's going on with that investigation into Leclerc and Verstappen for the Turn 2 Lap 1 incident. And just checking the wires here, I don't see anything going on with that investigation. The final result, as they crossed the line, still standing for the moment. We'll await those to be confirmed. However, Charles Leclerc still classified in 6th, and obviously Max Verstappen did not finish the race. So we'll see if anything more is to come from that. However, for the moment, right now, it is time for all of us in North America to think about going to bed, or at least sleeping for a few hours here. Got some stuff lined up to do tomorrow. So, yes, we'll be doing that. So, it's only the second race this year that I've done a live stream for. I don't know if I'll be able to do another one before the end of the season, but I figured with the unique circumstances that presented themselves this weekend, we absolutely had to be a part of it. So, I thank all of you for joining me, again, for the second stream of the day. Until next time, Ferrari Man 601 saying thank you all very much for joining me for this 2019 Japanese Grand Prix. Of course, we will see you soon. Thanks, everybody.